Welcome to Natural Born Talents. In today's video, I would like to answer some of the questions I have been getting with my co-workers and from you all from YouTube about how the dynamics of auras work on a daily basis. Now, before we proceed, I will remind people I am not a psychiatrist. The study of auras and the things related to it go back thousands of years. That's been passed on from my ancestors. This is just something that we do. So, that out of the way, let's take a look at today's subject, the red overlay. The red overlay sort of confuses the whole aura spectrum a bit. It's not the red aura, the soldier, sailor, tailor group, nor is it a part of the third layer of the human aura, which is often confused with the primary and secondary auras most people have. But I'll get into that in another video. Today we'll be focused on the red overlay. Now, the red overlay is usually found in people who had some sort of trauma as a child, who are mentally impaired, or in a few cases who've been in serious accidents. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is one of my co-workers pointed out a child that we all deal with who is mentally impaired, and I noticed that it did have the red overlay in this individual's psyche. Now, not all children who are mentally impaired have this overlay. It's only restricted to some. However, you can notice it when the child goes off of temper tantrums. The children who have very short tempers, who explode for no reason, usually violently, are likely the ones that have this red overlay. The red overlay seems to have survival instincts that allow the child to get through the day, but on the other hand has enormous amount of rage in it, similar to the red group aura. But this is somewhat tuned differently. It seems to be that this is put in the aura in place of love, nurturing, security that a child usually needs. In other words, this aura sets in order to get the child or the individual to survive to the end of a normal life. It is very geared towards survival mode, survival instinct. But it carries with it a lot of rage and frustration because when infused with mental disorders or auras that don't concentrate, that naturally don't concentrate well, this overlay can cause a lot of havoc in the psyche. It can cause a lot of frustration, temper tantrums, inabilities to focus, and so on, because of all of the pent-up energy that this overlay carries. Now, getting back to an individual case, I have one child, we'll call him child A, who is a yellow aura with this red overlay and is mentally impaired. Also has an ego, is a narcissistic. So when I watched his behavior yesterday, a teacher asked me, "What do you see?" And I explained to her the dynamics of what goes on for such a child. Now, the child itself is not a bad kid, but because of the ego and the red overlay, the teachers and the child have put themselves in a very bad pattern. Because the child has a red overlay, has a very short attention span. So yesterday when they were playing out with the children, he, halfway through the game that they were playing, stopped, went over to a list of names of the team members who were participating in the game, and he proceeded to tear them up. That in turn brought the wrath of another teacher down on him, and he just sat there and smirked at the teacher and said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And I realized that he was playing the teacher. What the kid was doing is that because he couldn't play the sport, he felt frustrated and isolated. So he wanted attention. So to get attention, he went over and ripped up all the names of the people playing the game. He did this on purpose. The child knew he was going to get this cheap, low-level, hostile reaction towards him. But he was willing to have that hostile reaction in order to get attention because it fed the red overlay. It pumped his ego. It pumped him up. And of course the teacher that scolded him was exhausted. He completely, this third grader completely drained this middle-aged adult. And I saw all the things going on in action here. I saw the ego, I saw the red overlay, I saw the third aura of the teacher, who is actually a green aura, turn red. So this kid at the third grade, probably through his red overlay instinct of survival, learned how to use ego at its most basic level to drain another individual for energy. They hook people. Now, I've seen politicians do the same thing. They make outrageous laws and rules, and the population gets really angry at them. But that's what they feed off of. This is why ego is so corrupt and so dangerous. You're feeding off of very, very, very low energy. If you're in a relationship where your partner's constantly manipulating you or harassing you in one way or another, you end up fighting all the time, it's likely that that individual is hooking you in order to feed off that negative energy to survive. Now, the teacher recognized what I was saying and said, you were spot on, but how do we fix it? And I suggested that the first thing you have to do is not give in to the child's ego. The second thing you should do is, if only, and I mean only when it's really a dangerous scenario, should you get angry at the child. Don't give them negative attention. Now, some people who are anti-spanking and some are anti-corporal punishment, I understand that. I developed a technique where I can get the child's attention very quickly without harming them in any physical way. The technique is very difficult to master, it takes years to master, so I won't explain it in this video at this time. But having said that, I grab the child's attention, get down eye to eye. Now this is very important, because if you do from this authoritarian, I'm an adult and you're a child and you don't know anything position, you're only feeding the ego game further. You need to get down to eye with the child. You need to explain why you're getting angry and why you're punishing the child. You need to confirm that the child recognizes what you're saying. Once you do that, once you see that the child says, yeah, I get it, I won't do it again kind of attitude, give them a big hug and compliment them on their good behavior and achievements. Now, this may seem like, well, yeah, of course, this is how you raise children. But when you look at it at the energy level of what you're doing, it's a little bit more complicated than that. What you're doing is you're weaning the child off of survival on negative energy and replacing it with loving energy. And that is a lot easier to say than to do. To people with these issues, negative energy is much like an addictive drug. Having said that, however, if you completely remove all corporal punishment and all shouting at a child, and you start to give in to the narcissist ego of the child, you're causing more problems than you're curing. It makes me wonder if it was intentional for everybody to get on the bandwagon of stop spanking your child or stop shouting at your child, so now we have a huge population of narcissistic idiots in the world. Now, having said that, I don't condone corporal punishment or shouting at a child. The point is not to do that, because that also causes a problem. The key is to get the child's attention in a way that the child understands that their behavior is unacceptable. They need to wean themselves off of it. And like any of my ancestors have told me, you cannot save anyone on this planet. They have to save themselves. But you can show them the way, and that's the point. The child cannot be saved by a teacher or a parent, especially from a simply hostile and angry one. But the parent or the teacher can show the child the way to wean themselves off of destructive behavior or narcissistic behavior. So having said that, I went on to explain that if you get angry or shout or use physical punishment, you're feeding the anger within the child. And that child later in life could explode and stab somebody with a scissors or something like that, which we have seen. So you don't want to do that, but you want to grab their attention so you are focused in their psyche. And this is the key point. They have to see you eye to eye. I watched the child yesterday, and it just soaked up the anger that the poor woman was just drilling into that kid, and that kid just got like, oh, now I got my sweets for the day kind of attitude. He's hooked on anger, and to wean him off of it is going to be very difficult. So you have to curb that behavior. You have to grab their attention and start pushing them, if you can, or getting their will in the direction of accepting love for their accomplishment and good behavior. And that is not easy to do. I have another child who's a violet who had the same symptoms of what I just described. And that child just the other day looked at me and knew they were doing something wrong and came up to me and said, you know, I'm really sorry I didn't do it the right way today. And I looked down on him and said, that's okay, as long as you know. And that child I knew grew and had cleared something very important in that individual's psyche. Now, the teachers know they can't go too far with this kid because he has special needs, which turned out to be another problem. The kid was bright enough to figure that out and started to play off of it. He started to get the teachers particularly, but also the parents, to give in to his childish wants. And for this reason, this is why I'm reluctant to always suggest to somebody to have their mentally impaired or special needs child isolated from the rest of the group, because they can start using that to manipulate the teachers. Now, that isn't always the case. It really is case by case. It's only the kids with the egos. Other children, I've noticed, really need one-on-one attention in order to focus on what they need to learn. But this kid obviously didn't need it. He was using the teachers for those extra sweets, so to speak. And it was more like these teachers need to learn not to be played by this kid. One teacher kind of figured that out and was why she was asking me all these questions. So from this day forward, they seem to be wanting to try all these new kinds of techniques to get this kid to straighten up a little bit. I'll give you an update on how that goes. In any case, that is how auras and the understanding of auras can be used on a daily basis. To me, there is nothing more telling, including mainstream psychology, than watching the flow of energy between human individuals. Energy doesn't lie, but people do. Well, I hope you found this video interesting. The next subjects will be dealing with the outer layers of the aura and the confusion that goes with that when analyzing the psyche of an individual versus analyzing the inner auras. Also, I'll be making a video on the age of the soul, the baby soul, the middle soul, the old soul, and so on. And finally, in the 4-part series will be a video on the child indigo. This is to clarify some of the misconceptions about the indigo and the hysteria of having an indigo aura. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comment section below. There is now online a test that you can take to test your aura. That will be in the description below. Purchasing any of the books listed below will help this channel. I really appreciate your support. Thanks again for watching. I hope to see you in the next video.